Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Sorry I wasn't here the first few days of the month or the week. There was lots of technical difficulties and I just didn't have internet access. Thankfully, we worked through that yesterday. Anyway, we're here today. I want to talk about insulin resistance. I want to talk about some of the top 10 things that people ask about insulin resistance so that you can understand it, know why that you should be concerned with it, and most importantly, what you can do about it. So we're going to dive into insulin resistance this morning, but in the meantime, welcome in everybody. Our JD, welcome in. Um, I'm live on a couple of different platforms. So as everybody's hopping in, we're going to just talk about this thing called insulin resistance today. I want to start off with a little bit of kind of like storytelling. So we're going to talk about insulin resistance in a different way this morning. Hang tight because we're going to go over top to bottom what insulin resistance is, why it matters, and why it's causing all of this stuff and how you can get over it. Welcome in Kim, TikToker, Patricia, Shonda, welcome in everybody. All right, so let's talk about this. Just imagine that your body is like a busy city, and insulin is the key that unlocks the doors to all the city, the homes, the businesses, all of it. So it's unlocking the doors to allow energy into all of these places in the city, big, small, everywhere in between. So think of insulin as the city's delivery trucks, and they're responsible for taking glucose or energy to these areas from your bloodstream, the homes, the businesses, the factories. And that energy is needed to keep the city running smoothly. Now, in a healthy city, the doors open easily and the delivery trucks show up and the glucose is dropped off and everyone has the energy they need to work, think, and play, and everything is humming along in perfect harmony. So that's in a perfect world, right? The crazy thing is, according to studies, that means less than 7% of us have that type of thing going on with insulin in our body. The truth for the rest of us is coming up. So over time, things start to get a little complicated, and the homes and factories, the cells in your body stop trusting the delivery trucks. Maybe they've been overloaded with deliveries for years, too much sugar, processed foods, and inactivity. Or maybe there's been some miscommunication in the city's control center, hormonal imbalances, stress, genetics. All of those things can start to lead to this problem. So now, when the trucks show up, we're talking insulin resistance actually, the doors won't open as easily. The cells are saying, hey, we don't need any more glucose right now. But insulin is still trying to deliver it because we're still putting it in our bodies. So to compensate, the city government, your pancreas says, let's send out more trucks. Maybe we need to shout louder to get the doors open. Maybe we need more delivery to get this done and out of the bloodstream. So now instead of one truck, there are 5 or 10 trucks all running up and down the roads, honking their horns, trying to get energy into homes, businesses, all of it. And um, they're just like honking their horns all over your body, producing, wanting you to produce more insulin to get the energy needed into the cells that are resistant to the truck's cues, right? So it's chaotic. Those trucks are backed up. They're spilling glucose all over the streets in your bloodstream. It's causing traffic jams, basically, and the doors, they're still not opening. So that energy's still not getting into the buildings that need it, your cells. So now instead of one truck, there's 5 or 10, and that's causing all the chaos. Eventually, the city structure starts to break down. Factories close because they're not getting the energy they need. Workers or your cells become sluggish, tired, and frustrated. Meanwhile, the glucose in the streets starts causing troubles. It's too much. So now you've got high blood sugar, inflammation, and damage to the streets or the blood vessels themselves. And the pancreas, your city government, is exhausted from screaming this message, from sending out all these trucks, from doing all this work and working overtime just to try and keep things running and keep the streets clean. So eventually it just can't keep up. And that's when more serious problems like type 2 diabetes occur. So insulin really happens when we have too much insulin in the body. And that too much insulin, like I said, is driven by the food we're eating and the rate at which we're eating that food. But the crazy thing with insulin resistance is we all tend to think we hear this term that's been labeled insulin resistance, and it doesn't always mean resistance to insulin. Some cells are taking way too much energy in, some cells are just staying the course, and some cells are not getting energy in, but it's causing this disarray in the body. So we have some cells that are rapidly growing, things like skin cells. So you have skin tags, you have dark skin patches. Maybe it's the blood vessels that the innermost layer is growing too fast. And so it's getting thick and constricted, and you're starting to have high blood pressure. But throughout the body, chaos is starting to happen because of excess insulin. Again, in a normal body, insulin is great and it does a good job. But what's happening with insulin resistance, what's happening to 93% of us, is that the insulin is out of control. I usually call it a bully. Dr. Bosworth was brilliant and she called it a dictator. So, whichever way it is, insulin starts out as this really helpful, kind, courteous thing, hormone in our bodies. And the more we rely on it, the more we call for it, it starts to become a bully. Eventually, yes, it becomes a dictator. It's telling your hormones what they can do. So I was on a call yesterday with someone and she was like, well, it just feels like after I had kids, everything changed. My hormones are all out of whack, all of this stuff. Um, just a really quick aside, all women become a little bit insulin resistant when they're pregnant. Some women do not overcome it as easily after pregnancy as others. And with insulin resistance and the dictator insulin being out, our hormones just are not working the same. So that means our sex hormones in women, we don't have enough estrogen. In men, we maybe have too much estrogen. The thyroid hormone starts to be affected. Your gut is affected. All of these things start to have problems in your body because of insulin resistance. So I want to go back to these 10 questions and make sure that I'm hitting all of the 10 questions that I had come up with that people were curious about. So you kind of know what insulin resistance is. It's a dysfunction of insulin in your body where insulin has become a dictator and is causing chaos inside your body. Um, Now, I didn't go over really directly what causes it. So there are three main causes for insulin resistance. One is stress and high cortisol levels. Another is injury and inflammation. So you have a surgery, you fall and get hurt way too much. Those types of inflammation, as well as inflammation caused by food imbalances, can start to drive insulin up and cause insulin resistance. But the one that we want to talk about today is our food. And why is it that our food has changed? What's making this the big problem for us? Well, we've stripped fibers out of our foods in the manufacturing process. And why have they done that? They've stripped fibers out of the food because fiber makes, I've got paint all over my fingers. Fiber makes the food more bitter, crunchier, harder to chew. Now, I'm going to say something a little inflammatory, and please take it with all the goodness in my heart, but we've all become a bit lazy, especially when it comes to what we're putting into our faces. Smoothies and pre-digested basically foods are what we tend to lean to and think that they're healthy, but we're robbing our body of some essential things that we need to do. We need to be chewing. Our food needs to be chewed. There's a whole process of enzymes and stuff that are created when we chew that help us break down food. We're bypassing that because we're creating all these smoothies and shakes and we're just drinking our food. Yeah, it tastes yummy, but now the glucose level is up. The fiber that we need is broken down and not being effective, and we're not chewing. So I saw a really interesting diagram one day of what they expect human beings to look like. And it's kind of hunched forward, our neck rounded, and the jaw is almost completely gone because we're not chewing. Part of the reason we're not chewing is because fiber has been removed from the food. So not only does it keep our gut healthy, but it's actually keeping our jaws and our facial structure healthy. And yet we've taken it out of our foods, and now it's causing all of these other issues. So What we eat matters, and what we eat is far deficient in fiber for what we should be getting when we look at glucose or sugars in our food. Fruit juices, you guys stop drinking fruit juices. Stop. Just stop. Now, there's a lot of people out there who will be like, but fruit juices give you these amazing vitamins and minerals, then eat your fruit. Go pick up an orange and eat it, but stop drinking the orange juice. Why I say that is for the benefit that you may get of the vitamins and minerals, you're missing the part that the sugar is now being delivered directly to your bloodstream. The sugar from fruit is predominantly fructose, and that can only be digested by your liver. Now we have non-alcoholic fatty liver problems, and we are seeing it in children as young as 6 years old because of the amount of fruit juice that we're drinking and delivering this fructose, this high load of fructose to our livers. That's kind of complicated. Just understand that if you're putting fruit juice in the house, you are not doing your children favors. You are just not. So yeah, encourage them to eat the apple, eat the orange. If they need something like that, eat that. But don't be giving them fruit juice all the time, because you're just going to spike their insulin and make them more likely to become insulin resistant and have problems with their liver. Okay, so our food is causing it, but so people are like, and I always say bagged, boxed, bar-coded foods. Stay away from bagged, boxed, bar-coded foods. And that's difficult. We all don't do that. I don't do that always. I should, but I don't. I'm human. I'm just like everyone else. But the truth is, those bagged, boxed, bar-coded foods deliver way more sugar than we need and way too little fiber, and now we're causing this problem. Also, you get hungrier. A really interesting thing I discovered in all this research that I do this last week is, and I still have to do the video on it, something to do with seed oils. They're important too. Keep the seed oils down. That seed oils, in the high amounts that we're eating them, can have a similar effect on your body as marijuana, in that it gives you the munchies. So I've always said sugar creates this system where, it's creating this micro biome imbalance and causing you to crave more sugar, because that negative microbiome thrives on sugar. But now we understand that omega-6s are actually complicating that as well. So having problems with cravings, sugar, and seed oils, if you can get those two reduced or out of your diet, you'll probably start to see that you're not having these uncontrolled cravings anymore. It's crazy how they affect your body. Okay. So everybody will say then, well, we need to eat more organic. I'm not gonna fight that, but organic doesn't mean perfect. So understand that too. What I would prefer, and what I see a lot of doctors talking about, is that you start where you can. You start where you can afford. Get the healthier foods that you can afford, and stop eating those bagged, boxed, bar-coded foods all the time. So here's the thing that I've noticed in the last 3 years as I've been on this journey myself. When I buy the bagged, boxed, bar-coded foods, it seems like they're less expensive. I don't know how many of you guys have heard or think that eating healthy is just too expensive. Put a 1 in if you think that eating healthy is just too expensive. The foods cost more. There's just no way I can feed my family like that. It will make me go broke to feed them those kind of foods, because I just can't afford it. How many people have heard that or feel that? Or when you go to the grocery store and you see these bagged, box, bar-coded foods, that's what you feel like I don't have a choice. This is what I can afford to give my family. Does anybody else feel like that? Okay, well, good that nobody does. But I know a lot of people that feel that way. In fact, I hear that comment a lot. So what I've noticed is, as I get rid of the bag box bar-coded foods, the seed oils, and the sugars out of my diet, I'm eating healthier foods. And yes, buying a 3-pack of steak definitely costs me more than buying some pre-processed food, but I eat less of it. So I'm actually overall spending less on my food to eat healthier, because I'm not falling prey to those things of sugar and the seed oils causing me to have sugar cravings all the time, or food cravings all the time, or having munchies all the time. So now my food budget has gone down. You guys have to stay the course and understand that what looks the best on the outset for you may not always be the best thing on in the long term for you. And what we really want is longevity and to feel healthy and structured throughout life. So, um, one of my friends is live. We'll deal with that later. Okay, so who's at risk for developing insulin resistance? Well, unfortunately, everybody is. This is not any longer just about genetics or familial stuff, although our family has a lot to do with whether we develop diabetes and insulin resistance because of the food environment that we grew up in, how our family eats. If grandma had diabetes, if mom had diabetes, it's more likely that it's the way that you eat and the types of food that you eat that are causing you to be there too than it is genetics. So if you can understand what foods are causing this to happen in your family and you can make some adjustments, you might just break that genetic mold of diabetes for your family. Now, it's true that there are some ethnicities and more melanated people are more likely to be insulin resistant than white people. It's just a fact of science. So African Americans, Pacific Islanders, Native Americans, Hispanics are all at greater risk for insulin resistance than their white counterparts. Now, I'm half white, half Native, and I suffered with insulin resistance for a long, long time. It's just true. There's a whole big story behind all of why this is happening or why I suppose this is happening. But understand that there is a genetic component in that yeah, some of us melanated people are more susceptible to it than people who are not. So, the symptoms of insulin resistance. Let's talk about some of those symptoms because this is one of the things where people get confused. They're like, well, I don't have insulin resistance or I don't have diabetes, but I'm gaining weight. I have trouble losing weight. I have this appetite and these cravings. I'm always hungry for sweets. My food hunger just never seems to go away. I'm tired all the time, and especially after meals. All of these things are signs that you're already insulin resistant and you're just not recognizing it. So let's go over some of the top 10 signs that don't require a medical diagnosis for you to start understanding that it could be you. So before I dive into these, is this helpful to anybody yet? So I just really want to give you guys top to bottom what's going on with insulin resistance so you can understand it and start to feel better. One of the biggest ways that you're going to be able to tell if you're starting to struggle with insulin resistance is belly fat. If your belly is growing, and even if the rest of your body is not, and you have that kind of roundness in the middle, that's a sign of insulin resistance. Most directly, it's a sign that the brain is cueing the body to store more visceral fat. That happens with high amounts of insulin in the body. So belly starting to protrude, whether you're heavy or not, pregnant or not, that's a sign of insulin resistance. The next one, and I think a lot of people suffer from this and don't even realize that it's a sign of insulin resistance. They just think it's a sign of their busy life. But constant fatigue is a big sign of insulin resistance. So if you're feeling sluggish or tired all the time, even after you've gotten a good night's sleep, it could be insulin resistance. Could it be that you have a very stressful life? Yes, it could. But remember that cortisol, spiked levels of cortisol from all that stress, also create insulin resistance in the body. So now you might just be battling fatigue from 2 points where your life is just stressful and you have insulin resistance. Remember, insulin resistance by and large means energy is not getting to the cells of the body. When the energy's not getting into the cells, those cells are fatigued and tired, and you have this overall overwhelming feeling of just, I'm so tired. I just can't seem to move. That's insulin resistance. So, frequent cravings for sugar are definitely a sign of insulin resistance. There's a whole lot going on there, but know that if you're craving sugar a lot, you probably are insulin resistant. Combine that with the big belly and the fatigue, and you can just most assuredly say, I have a problem. We need to fix it. So then if you're having these problems with cravings for sugar, especially right after you eat, say a half an hour after you eat, how many of you guys have this great big dinner, an amazing meal? You sit down with your family and you're maybe watching TV or hanging out, and all of a sudden you've got the munchies and you're craving, maybe it's popcorn, maybe it's potato chips, maybe you got to find that candy bar or that piece of dessert or whatever, but you're just hungry again and you just want to eat again. That, my friends, is a sign of insulin resistance. If you're hungry after you just ate a full meal, your body's energy is dysregulated and your body's telling you you need more energy when you don't. You just need to know how to utilize the energy that's already there. We're going to get to that in just a minute. Okay. So now, if you've had these things happening, you have low energy, you have constant fatigue, and your belly is growing. Now you're having some weight show up, right? But now it's not just like when I was younger, I could gain weight and I could lose weight just as quickly. And then it started becoming to where it was hard to lose weight and it was almost impossible to lose weight. In fact, I sat in a doctor's office one day crying because this young blonde doctor rolled her eyes at me as if I was lazy and undisciplined. I was a world champion athlete. I worked out 6 days a week, 3 hours a day. I ate keto. I couldn't lose weight. And she's telling me that it was all me. If you're having problems losing weight, it could be insulin resistance. And I can explain that. If anybody wants to know why you have a problem losing weight when you're insulin resistant, type a 1 in and I will explain that. Okay. So not only are you having difficulty losing weight, but now you have brain fog and you're fatigued and you're tired. And so that obviously is going to cause more weight gain. It's going to cause more problems. And you just feel like you're overwhelmed and the world is just too difficult to go through because you're having this brain fog. Okay, so difficulty losing weight. So thank you for that, Zahra. I don't know how to say your name, but I hope I didn't murder it too bad. And then there's one over here, Weatherby, Brenda, and Jane. Okay, so let's talk about why it's difficult to lose weight. Thanks, you guys, for asking that question or needing to know that, because I love to talk, but sometimes I want to make sure it's just what you guys need. So here's what happens. Insulin is a hormone that is a hormone of growth. It's called anabolic. It wants Zara. Okay, thank you. So insulin wants things to grow. When we are eliciting insulin, sorry you guys, I was painting all night and apparently I didn't get all the paint out from under my nails and stuff. It's driving me nuts. But anyway, so insulin is a hormone of growth. It wants things to grow. It's going to protect growth in the body, which means that insulin, when your body's flooded with insulin, it's going to be really good at storing the energy that doesn't get used, which means fat accumulation, right? Whether it's the visceral fat underneath the belly wall or whether it's the subcutaneous fat underneath, just under the skin, you're putting on extra fat because insulin wants to store things up. It wants things to grow. It doesn't want to allow you to tear anything down. So you're continually putting on weight. Insulin is fueling the fat cells growing, but it's blocking the fat cells breaking down. So even when you reduce the food you eat or the calories you eat, your body is now in a mode where it's blocking the breakdown of fat, especially if you're continuing to eat every 2 hours. Now, some of these people on here who are saying, well, to lose weight, you've got to eat every 2 hours, and you might see some results from that in the beginning, but your body is eventually going to stop responding to that. And what happens when you do these calorie restricted diets, but you're eating every 2 hours, is you're retraining your metabolism to run at a lower set point. So now you have a metabolism that should be running on 2,000 calories, but it's just dysregulated. And we start training our body to run on 1,200 calories. It only takes about 4 weeks for your body to reset to that 1,200 calories. It can take 6 months for it to reset back up to 2,000 calories. So highly restricted calorie cutting can increase some weight loss in the short term, but in the long term, you've just slowed your metabolism down and made that set point even lower. And now you can't go back to where you were because you're just going to gain all the weight back the minute you start increasing your calories again. What we want to understand is that when we take a break from eating, doing a little bit of intermittent fasting, when we stop putting all that food in our face, then our insulin doesn't have to run the show all the time. And insulin can come down because we're not spiking it all the time. And when insulin goes down, then we have the opportunity to burn calories, to burn fat, to get rid of um, the that weight. So, Brenda, that's an amazing question. She says, why would one lose inches but not weight? So, let's talk about that too. With insulin resistance, you're not getting energy to the muscles, which weigh a lot, right? So you're depleting your muscles as you become more insulin resistant, your muscle mass is going down. You're not getting the energy and the nutrients that your muscles need. So they're depleting, right? So that dense, highly dense weight, and it happens in your bones too. Osteoporosis starts happening when you're not getting nutrients to the bones. That's one of the things. So all of this really dense tissue in the body is being depleted, and insulin is encouraging fat, which is way less of weight for the size, right? So you take two sizes, one of muscle, two pieces, one of muscle, one of fat. The fat's going to weigh less for the same size than the muscle does. When you start to get insulin resistance under control, a lot of people will see this phenomenon where they're losing inches, but the weight on the scale isn't going down. So what's happening is the fat is going away. That's why you're losing the inches. But now because you're becoming more insulin sensitive and the tissues are able to get the cues of the energy that they need, you're starting to be able to build healthier bone, muscle, tissues, ligaments, joints, all of that, which all weigh more than fat. So your body gets smaller, but your weight doesn't change. That's a very healthy thing happening in your body. I hope that somewhat explains it for you. Okay, I just want to make sure there's no other questions so far. All right, so with insulin resistance, so all these people who are saying eat every 2 hours, every time you eat, you're spiking your insulin in the way that we eat, in the way that they're saying, because they'll be like, oh, Ezekiel bread or this or that or the other thing. And so you're spiking your insulin because you're spiking your blood glucose. So if you're eating every 2 hours and you're spiking your insulin over and over and over again, part of the reason you're having problems losing weight is because you never allow the insulin to come down. Okay. So yay, Brenda, that must have been applying to you that you lost inches but not weight, which just means that your body, especially as women, the older we get, the harder it is for us to maintain healthy muscle mass. I want to stop here because a lot of people think when I say muscle, they think skeletal muscle. Understand your heart, your kidneys, your lungs, all of that's muscle tissue. So having healthier muscle tissue throughout your body does not mean you look like a bodybuilder or some crazy CrossFit person who's maybe gone a little bit further than you want to. It just means having healthy human muscle that we need to function daily. Um, you've lost 2 clothing sizes but not weight, right? And that can happen when we start to shift from insulin dependent to being insulin sensitive. Okay, so and they've actually done some studies where they tested fat cells on people who were injecting insulin, and the fat cells around the injection sites where people were having insulin, there was much more fat in those cells than cells even a few inches away where the insulin wasn't being injected. So you work outside. Why does your blood sugar go up when you're working? There's so much to that that I can't unpack with that one question. You work outside, that doesn't tell me a whole lot. What I would be concerned with more is what types of food are you eating when you're working? Um, Now, there's a truth here too that I want people to understand. Your blood sugar can rise even when you're not eating. Okay. Your blood sugar is not like a one and done. It's 100 and it's 100 all day long because we're using energy all the time. So we're depleting energy and we're reintroducing energy. And even when you're not eating, your body has a process, some complicated processes to start removing stored packets of glucose called glycogen out of the liver to give you energy. When those packets of stored glucose get broken down and go back into the bloodstream, so you have the energy to do your job, your blood sugar is going to go up even if you're not eating. Now, if you are eating all day and you're having things like sugars and chips and stuff to like keep your energy up, of course your blood sugar is going to go up even though you're working. It takes You can start to see a blood sugar spike within about a half an hour of eating, but the biggest spike is going to be about 2 hours after eating, and it takes about 4 hours for all of that to go away. Most of us are eating every 2 hours because that's what you're being told. I was told that. I did that for a number of years too, and it was devastating for my health. But when you're eating every 2 hours, you never allow the insulin to come down. And what does insulin do? It promotes growth, it increases fat storage, it blocks fat breakdown. Now, so I did a 10-day fast a couple of years ago just to see. I did a 3-day fast, I did a 5-day fast, I did a 7-day fast, I did a 10-day fast, all at different times. I wanted to see what happened to my body when I was fasting. During the 10-day fast, or was it the 10-day fast? One of the longer fasts, I started checking my blood sugars. Okay. And what I noticed was that even a couple of days into a fast where I wasn't taking in any food, my blood sugars would drop down to about 60, and that's about the lowest you want them to drop to where you start to have problems. But then immediately, even not eating, my blood sugars would start to bounce back up. What I found was instead of these weird spikes in my blood sugar, during the fasting phase, I had this nice curve. My blood sugars would go up to about 120. They would drop down to about 60, then they would come back up. So my body was doing its job. It was pulling energy when I needed it. My body would utilize the energy. As it was utilizing the energy, my blood sugar levels would drop. Then my body was like, "Ooh, hey, the blood sugar levels are a little low and we need some energy." So then it would start to pull out of the fat stores, out of the liver, out of whatever, and put sugar back into my bloodstream. So I had the energy to make it through the day. Everybody's body does that. Everybody's body has great fluctuations in your blood sugars throughout the day because we are not a robot that's plugged into a wall that has a constant flow of energy coming through us. We're not meant to sustain that, withstand that. We're meant to have these ebbs and flows in our energy. What would happen if you were trying to lay down and rest and you had really high amounts of energy? You wouldn't be able to rest. Your body would be like, I got all this energy. I got to go do something. So our body is meant to fluctuate with all of our hormones, with all of our energy needs. It follows this pattern of what we need through the day. Your blood sugars can absolutely rise even when you're not eating and even when you're working. But there's way more to your statement, sir, than I can. There's more things I would need to know to be able to give you a really good answer to that question. Okay, so what's my view on acetic acid? That's a whole other talk. And Brenda, I'm gonna just be really honest. I'm not as versed on acetic acid. So I would have to, I know that I've read about it, I know, but it wasn't my focus. So I would have to go do some research on acetic acid to come back and give you a very intelligible response to that question. Is that fair? And I'm more than happy to do that. We can talk about acetic acid tomorrow after I've had a chance to do a little bit more research on it. Okay, so symptoms of insulin resistance. That's where we were when we got off on this thing. So we were talking about weight. I explained a little bit why it's difficult to lose weight when you have insulin resistance. Brain fog is a real problem. Look, your brain becomes insulin resistant at the same time and the same rate as your body does. If your body's not getting energy, your brain's not getting energy. And just bottom line, brain fog can be a lot of your brain just not getting energy. A lot of hunger that you feel that you have could be because your brain is saying, I need energy, I need sustenance, I need something to function, and it's just not able to get it because of the insulin resistant state that you're in. Another one, which is really close to home to me, another sign and symptom. So remember, we talked about big belly, we talked about cravings for sugar, we talked about difficulty losing weight, we just briefly talked about brain fog, but also constant fatigue. Those are all signs of insulin resistance. High blood pressure of 130 over 80 or higher is a problem, and that is a sign of insulin resistance. 95% of hypertension, high blood pressure, according to science, is attributed to insulin resistance. So high blood pressure and the downline resulting heart disease disorders are all linked to insulin resistance. If you're starting to see that, understand that the bigger picture of why you're having hypertension is probably insulin resistance and not something genetic. Now, am I telling you don't go see your cardiologist? Absolutely, I'm not. Please work with your cardiologist, but understand that maybe you could do some things at home to help your heart, and those are going to be very different from what you may think you know. So why don't I talk about, we'll talk about acetic acid a little bit tomorrow, but I was wanting to talk about blood pressure again. It's one of my favorite topics. We'll talk about that tomorrow too, and I'll explain 5 ways that insulin resistance is causing your blood pressure to go up, and we'll same things, how to get rid of it. Okay, so good morning, Judy. I love your little peace sign. Okay, so high blood pressure is a sign. Skin tags, those little mushroom-like projections of skin. I don't have a single skin tag on me anywhere today. 3 years ago, I had them on my neck, I had them in my groin, I had them in my underarms. I got my insulin resistance under control, skin tags went away. That's one of the things where the body's taking in too much energy. Keratinocytes, keratin in the skin cells is being overproduced, and it's making too much skin, and so it ends up projecting out as these little skin tags. Stop the overproduction, the skin tags go away. You don't have to have them cut off, lasered off, any of that. If your skin tags aren't going away, you're not being as consistent with the dietary recommendations I'm going to give you in just a minute, or they would be going away. Dark patches of skin, or acanthosis nigricans, is another one. If you're feeling like you need to urinate a lot, or you're thirsty all the time, which was highly me when I was diabetic, when I was insulin resistant, that's a sign. So, and then swollen extremities or edema. So hands and feet swelling, you guys, that's one of the first things you can tell. If you get up in the day and your hands and feet start swelling right away, you can't wear regular socks, your shoes don't want to fit, you have an insulin problem. Please address it before it becomes really, really damaging to you. Okay. You're very welcome, Brenda. And I am gonna, let me write that down before I forget. Acetic acid, or I will most assuredly forget. My ADHD brain, I will remember it 3 days later and be like, oh shoot, I was gonna talk about that. Okay. Thanks for allowing me that grace. All right. Okay, guys. So that was some of the stuff. Now, those are signs and symptoms. Let's go over them again. A big belly, um, constant fatigue, brain fog, hypertension. I can't remember them all. Difficulty losing weight, high blood pressure, hypertension, dark patches of skin, skin takes, swollen extremities. Those are all signs of insulin resistance. But what happens if you don't treat the insulin resistance? You guys, if you're so cavalier that you're like, this doesn't this doesn't affect me, and it's not ever going to be me, as a 60-year-old who thought that all my life, who thought like I'm bulletproof, like, right? I have accidents, I have whatever, but I'm good. It's not going to be me. It is me. I've lost my gallbladder. I've lost 3 joints. My heart needs to be strengthened back up now after years of hypertension. So many things happened to my body because nobody addressed insulin resistance. I didn't know what it was. My doctors never said anything, and my health failed because of it. So some of the things that can happen long term when you don't address your insulin resistance are, of course, diabetes type 2. And that goes to one of the questions that is most commonly asked. Yes, insulin resistance is very highly linked to diabetes. In fact, it's the precursor to diabetes. So just understand that, and I can tell you why they're not catching it earlier. We don't really have a good test right now to tell if you're insulin resistant. So we have to go by symptoms. We have to go do some other things. I'll give you a calculation in a little bit that can help you understand that. But there's no perfect way to tell about insulin resistance right now other than all these signs and symptoms. Okay, so downline, type 2 diabetes. And if you don't know, type 2 diabetes is a devastating disorder. You can lose joints. I ran into a woman who's already lost a toe, has sores on another foot, and it's hard for me, you guys. It's hard because I was talking to her, and I don't approach people like, oh, you got to do this system, but I kind of do, especially when I hear a story like this. But she was like, no, no, I got my diabetes under control. Well, if your diabetes was under control, you wouldn't have foot sores from diabetic foot sores on your feet. You wouldn't be losing toes to diabetes. You wouldn't have this blackened skin that's crawling up your leg, which means that you're in danger of having other amputations. So, you guys, it's no joke. Please don't let it get to diabetes. It that can be really devastating. But heart disease and hypertension are two other things that are very highly linked to long-term insulin resistance that's not taken care of. So if you know somebody who's struggling with hypertension and resulting heart disease, you might want to send them this way so they can start understanding the real root cause of what's going on and get it under control. Now, it's so important that the protocol I'm going to talk about in a little bit, we have a cardiologist who recommends it to every single patient who walks through the door because he knows that most of the heart problems are not genetic, they're foodborne. And we're getting sick because of the food we're eating and the lack of nutrients that are in the food that we're eating. So, fatty liver disease, it's no longer alcoholic fatty liver disease. It was called non alcoholic fatty liver disease. I just prefer to call it liver disease because we're just gaining too much fat and issues in our liver. Fructose, remember, is going to be really hard on it. High amounts of sugar are really hard on it. All of that is what happens when you don't get your insulin resistance under control. Obesity, obviously, that's going to happen. You're going to have a really hard time losing weight. I've had people who've lost 190, 150 pounds with the protocol by getting their insulin resistance under control, and they feel better than they ever have. But now, once you've gained that weight, obviously, you're going to have loose skin. You're going to have a whole host of other problems. So just don't get there in the first place. Understand that this obesity problem you're having is an insulin problem and start addressing it now. Okay, polycystic ovarian syndrome and on the other side, erectile dysfunction and testosterone insufficiency are long-term effects of insulin resistance. Chronic inflammation. If you're having this inflammation throughout your body and it's costing you joints, like I've lost 2 hips and a knee, directly related to insulin resistance that nobody caught. That can all happen. That inflammation can really tear up your body. Neuropathy, so your nerve endings are starting to not fire correctly under the onslaught of insulin, and then kidney disease. Those are some of the top 10 things that can happen to you if you don't get insulin under control now. So it's not something you want to ignore and say it's not going to happen to me, because it happens to everyone that doesn't get it under control. Okay. This is just your body is breaking down under the onslaught of insulin, and it's not where we want to be. It's not how we want to live. None of us want to live in this illness and sickness all the time. So, how is it diagnosed right now? Well, there's a couple of things, they will go by symptoms and whatnot to understand insulin resistance. The sad truth is, most of the time it's not diagnosed until it becomes diabetes. And here's why. In all of this onslaught of insulin and insulin doing its job and trying to deliver energy stuff, really technical term, deliver energy to the cells. When the cells won't take it in and insulin has this extra energy, where does it put it? It's going to put it in your storage unit or your fat cells. So now you're gaining weight, your fat level is going up, but you're not having excess blood sugar because insulin was able to find a place to put it, your fat cells. So your blood sugar in your bloodstream is staying fairly normal, but you're getting heavier and you're starting to have some of these other problems: skin tags, acanthosis nigricans, hypertension, chronic fatigue, headaches. All of this stuff is starting to happen, but you're like, but my blood sugars aren't high. My A1C isn't out of control. It can't be me. Yes, it can. So, with insulin resistance, it's keeping the sugar out of the bloodstream by putting it somewhere, anywhere, including your fat cells. At some point, those fat cells, and every person, your fat cells are going to react differently. Okay. So, every person has a certain capacity for their fat cells, and when the fat cells reach capacity, now they start to say, well, hey, I'm going to explode. I'm not going to be able to survive if I take on any more of this stinking glucose that nobody else wants. So you can think of it two ways. Like the insulin is still delivering the energy to the fat cells, but the fat cells are passively aggressively going, yeah, yeah, okay, okay. But I'm going to spill it right back out into the bloodstream, or they're just not taking it in anymore, and so it's staying in the bloodstream. But now at this point, when the fat cells are full, your bloodstream is going to start to show increased sugar because insulin no longer has a place to put it. Doesn't mean you weren't insulin resistant all along, but now, because your blood sugars are going up, because your A1C is going up, you magically get the diagnosis of diabetes. Hey, you're diabetic, your blood sugars are up. You know that that could have been happening for 10, 20 years before you ever got the diagnosis of diabetes, and then all of this other damage is going on in your body that whole time because nobody knows how to really diagnose insulin resistance right now. Two calculations that you can do to help you understand if you're at risk for insulin resistance. The first one is on the NIH's website here in the US, National Institutes of Health. So, what you're going to do is find your current labs, your complete metabolic panel, and you're going to go down to the fats part or the cholesterol part, and you want to take your triglycerides and divide them by your HDL. There's a big complicated story about all this, and today might not be the day, but I will definitely go over it sometime if anybody wants to know. Right now, take your triglycerides, divide it by your HDL, not your LDL. The resulting number should be 1.5 or less. That should mean that you're okay. But look, if you still have symptoms and your number's 1.5, start addressing it. You'll be surprised at what can happen. If that number's over 1.5, especially if it's over 2, and most especially if it's over 3, you have an insulin resistance problem, even if you haven't been diagnosed with diabetes, and you need to start addressing it before all the other stuff starts to happen. It doesn't take a medication to address it. This whole lie that diabetes is progressive and irreversible is a lie. If our food and the bad food that we're eating got us there, then fixing the bad food that we're eating and giving our bodies the nutrients they need is going to help us start to come out of this. And that's actually what happens. You're not deficient in metformin. You're not deficient in Ozempic. You're not deficient in Monjaro. You're not deficient in any of those things. That's not what caused the problem. And people doing those drugs are not figuring out what caused them to be there in the first place. They're putting a Band-Aid on a wound, but they're not healing the wound. Okay? They've covered it, but they're not healing it. So those drugs are not going to help you long term unless you understand what's happening with insulin resistance. Okay. So we know that our food is what's causing it. We know that the lack of fiber in our food is causing it. So I'm going to slow down for a second and say this. When we eat glucose, we should have fiber attached to it. And what's happened, why this is such a problem, is we've unwrapped glucose from fiber. Now, the protective mechanism that our food gives our body to deal with the onslaught of sugar has been removed. And so now sugar is just running rampant throughout our body, basically. And what we really need is fiber to go with those to slow down the glucose level. Because we have low energy levels, because our body's just not getting it from the food because of high insulin that's built up, we need more energy. That energy that we can get in is going to help curb our hunger and help us deal with sugar better. But it doesn't mean just eating another candy bar. It doesn't mean eating another bag of chips. It doesn't mean that kind of energy. We have to figure out that when we're insulin resistant, our body is so busy getting all this sugar in, but at the same time is not able to absorb other nutrients. We need to slow that down, allow our body to get in the supporting nutrients, the things like vitamins and minerals that we need so that our bodies can act right. And right now they can't because they're not getting what they need. Right? And I think we all know this. At some level, we all know that our food is causing us to be sick, and it is what it is. But the other side of that story, and please type a 2 in if this feels like you. Okay, so Misha, I get our food is making us sick. I get all the stuff that you're telling me makes sense, whatever. But what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to live in today's world when I'm surrounded by all this stuff? Seed oils covering everything, sugar packaged into everything, fiber removed from everything. I don't have the time to go grow a garden in the middle of the woods in a log cabin and do all this stuff and raise my own cattle and da 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 da. I don't know what to do. Most people are so confused now by what am I supposed to do? So here's what you can do. Understand that our food environment is imperfect. Okay. Understand that we need to fix it. So what I did and what thousands, if not millions of other people are doing is this. Understanding that our food is imperfect, we're choosing to put back what's been stripped out so that our bodies can actually function like they're meant to function. And that's the key. It's not a medication, it's food. So what I do is every morning I have a tea, which is in this lovely pink one today. Um, the tea helps me produce insulin. It helps me be more insulin sensitive, allowing sugar to get into the cells. It gives me energy. It gives me mental clarity. It has anti-inflammatory, antioxidant components in it. It's a tea. Stevia, a tea, and a little bit of citric acid for flavoring. That's it. But the tea has every single vitamin and mineral that we need to sustain life. So it's a great way to start my morning. Now, this morning is fasting, so I won't be eating until later. My son is visiting, so I'm breaking my 36-12 fast because it's a mama thing. I want to cook for my son. I want to enjoy time with him while he's here. So we've had ribs, we've had steak, we're having white chicken chili tonight. We're going to have another, like highly protein filled meal. But I will be enjoying my dinners with my son while he's here this week. My son is 32 years old. He's a grown man, but he's still my son. I'm still going to have real food with him when he comes and just sit down and enjoy that time that we get to spend talking and hanging out together. So, okay. So I do this tea in the morning. I do this tea again in the afternoon when I feel like I need more energy, mental clarity, and to get through the day. The other thing is this tea increases my own GLP-1, and that's a big term for glucagon-like peptide, which helps us get energy when we don't have insulin present. It increases my own GLP-1 by 70% from this tea in a manner that my body can use, unlike the injectables that don't break down and they're constant at 300 to 400 times the amount we're supposed to have in our body, and that's where damage starts to happen. So I have this tea helping me be more insulin sensitive, helping me shut down hunger cravings, helping me have energy. This tea does a whole lot for me. Then before I eat, I just have this pre-meal drink that gives me fiber, slows down the sugar absorption into my system. It can decrease a sugar spike by up to 43%. So they tested it on a high glycemic meal, a waffle breakfast with syrup and orange juice. It reduced a blood sugar spike by 43%. That is how we start to address this whole insulin resistance thing. Does it mean you can never have pizza again? No. Does it mean you can never have a big fat juicy burger someplace? No. Does it mean you can't go enjoy Mexican food when you want it? No. Does it mean you can't go to the Italian restaurant because you're on some specific diet? No. Does it mean you can't go out and have ice cream once in a while? No. Does it mean you can't have cake or cupcakes at weddings and birthdays and stuff? No. It just means that you use the tools before you eat, and it helps you deal with the onslaught of our modern food, and you will be able to start reversing your insulin resistance. Now, the majority of the time, do you need to be eating better? Yes. So there are some simple tips that along with the system that I give, and I want to talk about those right now. So 6 simple tips for addressing your insulin resistance. The system is going to make it easier, but you can do this regardless. Okay, so you ready? You want to get fiber in first before you eat every time you eat. Now, a lot of people will talk about the fiber in the orange canister. It reduces a blood sugar spike by about 10%. This reduces it by about 43%. I don't know, but I would rather just do this than something that's only minimally going to change my blood sugar spike. So the fiber first. So you get the tea in my profile. Just tap on my profile link, and the protocol is in there. And all the information about it is in there. You guys, if you go to Amazon, eBay, Walmart and buy it, you're not getting the 90-day money back guarantee. You're not getting the low price guarantee. And everybody that I have talked to that bought it on Amazon paid about $100 more than they needed to for it. Who has $100 to just throw away and not get all the guarantees and not get all the coaching and all the other stuff that goes along with it? So just use the link in my profile. It'll get you right there. The company ships out the product. I never handle it. You never have to worry about some middle person mistreating your goods. It goes directly from the company. So just use my link in my profile and you'll find it there. So, all right, fiber first before you eat, every time you eat. Then what you want to do is prioritize protein. I can't say this heavily enough. I don't care whether you're vegan or whether you're carnivore or whether you're somewhere in between. Protein is the first thing besides fiber you should have on your plate. Okay. And most of us need about a gram of protein per pound of body weight. If you're a moderately active adult, that's what you need. If you're less active, maybe 0.8. If you're more active, maybe a little bit more. We'll say about 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight. Now, say my ideal body weight, I have a thicker bone structure. I carry a lot of muscle. Maybe that is about 170 for me. That means I need to get in about 170 grams of protein a day. I'm not as active as I used to. So maybe we take that down to the 0.8 and say it's about 150 grams of protein. Well, most of us are only getting in about 30 grams of protein in a day. Protein is one of the things that's going to help you be most insulin sensitive, stave off diabetes, stave off heart disease, keep your muscles strong, keep you fed and fueled. Protein is a building block, but it also gives you energy. So protein, it doesn't spike your insulin as much, only about half as much as carbohydrates do, but it gives you the building blocks and it gives you sustained energy. It's the most satiating of the food types we have. Satiating mean when you eat a big fat steak, you're not going to have breakthrough hunger an hour later. If you had a sandwich, which is bread and maybe some vegetables and whatnot, you're going to be hungrier quicker. Protein keeps your hunger down the most. So fiber first, protein. So think FPF, fiber, protein, fats. Don't fear fats, but understand what fats you should be eating. Again, I am not an advocate for seed oils. People will say, oh, they don't cause insulin resistance. And yet there's so much information out there that shows that through inflammatory pathways and whatnot, it does cause your insulin resistance to spike. Some research I just recently did said they can estimate that our ratio of omega-6s, which is seed oils, to omega-3s should be about 1 to 1. At the worst, it should be about 4 omega-6 to 1 omega-3 unit, okay? Where we're at today, the average adult is getting 20 units of omega-6s to 1 unit of omega-3s. That's causing inflammation. It has all of these other acidic properties that are causing problems in the body. Seed oils are not good. Yes, seeds do. You read it yourself. Perfect. Thank you for that, Elena. So seed oils are not the ones. We want to think about fruit oils. So if you think about olives, avocados, and coconut, you can squeeze the meat of that fruit and get oil out of that. Those are healthy oils for you. Those are the top 3 oils that I recommend anyway. And then butter, ghee, and animal fats. Stop taking the yolks out of your eggs. You need them in there. And that's a whole other talk, but I can do that another day. So fiber, protein, and fats. Avocado oil, extra virgin olive oil, coconut oil, butter, ghee, animal fats. Those are the fats you should be focused on. And there's more and more research that shows that those fats in reasonable amounts. I'm not telling you to go eat a whole jar of coconut oil today, but those, if we just simply replace those oils for the seed oils we've been using, you will see that your heart starts to function better, your insulin resistance gets better, all across the board, it's better. Good morning, Goddess Love and Light. That's a beautiful name, by the way. Goddess Love and Light. Okay, so fiber, protein, fat. Those are the first three that I want you to remember. Then you're going to limit your carbs. And the best way to limit your carbs is stop eating carbs out of bags, boxes, and barcodes. You can get a great amount of carbs from your dark green leafy vegetables, from any vegetable, from your fruits and berries and all of that. That's where you should be getting your carbs. Okay, not from bags, boxes, and barcodes. Now, I'm not perfect. I do it too. So when I have pegged box barcoded carbs, I have this. Like, I don't normally have bread in the house, but my son is here. I know he loves Hawaiian rolls. I made him steak last night. He actually had garlic knots with his steak, and then we had a big salad with it. That was dinner. The night before, we had ribs and some vegetables and Hawaiian rolls. And tonight we'll have this white chicken chili that I made. By the way, navy beans are in my chili because they help reduce how quickly sugar gets um, digested in our body, so it doesn't absorb as much. Navy beans, who knew? Okay, so that's all I do to help with my blood sugar spike. So fiber, protein, fats. Limit your carbs. Do some time-based eating. If you understand one thing out of today, understand that every time you eat, you're spiking your insulin. One thing I haven't said today is it takes 8 hours, a minimum of 8 hours for your insulin to come down after you've spiked it. So if you're eating every 2 hours and you're having dinner and then you're having chips or popcorn or candy bars or cupcakes or a bowl of ice cream or a bowl of cereal, which was my dessert go-to for a long time. Raisin bran was what I liked for dessert, by the way. You're spiking your insulin again. Then you go to bed, you're sleeping for 6 to maybe 8 hours. Just when your insulin goes down, you wake up, you have a coffee with a lot of sugar and stuff in it. You have a bagel, you have oatmeal, you have whatever, and it's spiking your insulin again. And then you're eating every 2 hours, and your insulin level never comes down to the point where some of the other hormones, like glucagon, can come out and do their job. So time-based eating is important if we've got to get the insulin down and to sleep so that we can have some of the other effects that need to happen in our body, like fat burning. We have to get insulin down, which means we have to take a break from stuffing our face. At about 10 hours, glucagon comes out. Glucagon helps us start. Glucagon is one thing that actually it raises our blood sugars, but we need it because glucagon is the thing behind the scenes when we're not eating that says, okay, we're going to pull some of the fat stores from the liver. We're going to pull some of the fat stores from around the body, and we're going to utilize those. But we cannot do that if insulin is in control all the time. At hour 10 is when glucagon comes out, but it takes a couple hours for the body to respond. So at about hour 12, HGH and ketones start to be produced. And those messengers tell us that we're burning fat for fuel. That begins happening at about hour 14. So TikTok wants me to verify. There we go. Okay, try it again. Okay, so at about hour 14, we're actually in a fat burning state. That's why we do a 16-hour fast. You get about 2 hours of really good fat burning, and then you break your fast, not with a bagel, not with a big fat sandwich and chips, with protein and fats. And now you're starting to become more insulin sensitive, and you're training your body to really be able to utilize fat for fuel as well. Now, it doesn't happen overnight, guys. You've trained your body to want sugar for fuel all the time. It can take some time for your body to adjust. It can take 30 days, it could take 60 days. Some people it's taken 90 days. Along the way, though, you're starting to feel better. You start to have more energy. You start to have more mental clarity. Your teeth and gums may stop bleeding. Your hair might start growing back in on your head instead of on your face. Your hormones may be regulated. I've had ladies overcome PCOS in just those first 90 days. So give it the time that it needs to be able to heal and the tools that it needs to heal. And that's what we're doing with the system. I'm following those 6 simple principles every day. And then I add these tools in. So right now, again, I'm having my tea. I will, when my son comes home for dinner tonight, we'll have that white chicken chili, probably some Hawaiian rolls. He'll be here till Sunday, so mama's gonna cook. And I love to see my son happy, but I want to feed him healthy. So I'm not going to feed him a bunch of junk. He loves my lasagna. Who knows? I might surprise him later this week with lasagna, but we can do it because I'm just adding in the fiber before I have the lasagna. I'm doing my intermittent fasting and I'm getting the energy and vitamins and nutrients I need throughout the day. Okay, so you guys, I think that's it. Does anybody have, now the last question is, are there any medications for treating insulin resistance? And there's a lot out there. There's none that I would really recommend. And I was really, it gave me some not confidence. Confidence is not the right word. It just really helped my soul last night when I was talking to a woman and she was like, they've talked to me about weight loss drugs. And I don't want to do it. Very earnestly, I asked her why. Before I imposed my views and my stuff, I was like, I just am curious to understand why you feel this way. What brought you to that determination? Great question, right? And so she shared with me, that she has actually worked with a number of women who've had bowel blockages, who've had all of these. She's known women who've done those drugs and ended up with those devastating disorders, and she doesn't want any part of it. Yay. So yeah, there are drugs out there. I don't choose to go that route. So I am choosing to go with science and understand that I'm just putting back what was stripped out so my body can deal with itself in a way that it's always been meant to do. So overcame hypertension. My hypertension is under control. My diabetes is reversed. And so many other good things have happened. That's all that it took. And that's all it takes for you guys too. Tomorrow we'll talk about heart disease. I can show you some pictures of some people. We'll do that tomorrow who have done the system. Weight is one of the things that people are really concerned with. Brenda, I'm so proud of you for losing 2 clothing sizes. Yeah, we'll talk about acetic acid and we'll also talk about blood pressure tomorrow. So you guys, thanks for hanging out with me. If you have questions, shoot me your questions. I will do my best. If I don't know the answer, I will go find an answer and I will come back and answer for you. So I'm not here claiming to know everything. I'm claiming to learn as I go and hopefully help you guys understand as I go too, so that you guys don't have to suffer with. I was thinking yesterday, I've lost 3 joints. I've lost my gallbladder. My heart is damaged. Uh, just so many things that happened because nobody ever talked to me about insulin resistance. And nobody, until 3 years ago, I found this system. Nobody told me that it was so simple to overcome. I was like everybody else, hearing that once you had diabetes, it's progressive, it's non-reversible. That's bullshit. Bullshit. So it can absolutely be reversed, and you guys just need to know how to get there. And I'm more than happy to help you. So we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day. Use my link if you're interested in the system. Ask me questions. My WhatsApp's in there so you can get a hold of me if you need to, and let's get you healthy again. Yeah, Elena, it's total bullshit. There's not many diseases and disorders out there that we cannot reverse and can control with understanding our diet and how it's impacting us. And it doesn't mean you have to be a Puritan. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It just means you need to understand what's really happening so you can correct it. All right, you guys, we'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day. And again, I apologize for Monday, Tuesday, out of my control, but we'll be here tomorrow. Have a good one. Bye, guys. Bye, Brenda.